Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
There's a very special day that is coming up. It's a day that I think that should not be relegated to just one single day, although it's a national holiday, but it should be something that we think about every single day that we live here in the greatest nation that the world has ever known. Because there's a reason why we get to live here in this great nation, and that's because of men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms, liberties, and the rights that we enjoy. Men and women who took an oath to a code, a set of principles and values. I think about the United States Army and the Navy and the Marine Corps, because all three of those services were established in 1775. As a matter of fact, next month in June, on the 14th, that is the birthday of the United States Army. Since 1775, I want you to think about that, 276 years. Before there was an America, there was an army that was established. And of course, the Navy came a little later, I believe in October 1775. And of course, the Marine Corps, November the 10th of 1775. But the important thing to realize is that we had men that were standing up to fight for this nation before the nation was even conceived. Not the 1619 Project crap. But I'm talking about July the 4th. And of course, most people are going to be thinking about June, the Progressive Socialist Left, the DEI disciples, as the LGBTQ plus IAXYZ LMNO whatever month. But June the 14th is the birthday of the Army, and it is also Flag Day. How many leftists are going to be thinking about that? And so for 246 years, we know that people have laid down their lives for this country. And I can't think of any better words that address that than the words that were spoken on 19 November of 1863, 272 words. And it came from a man who was not the primary speaker for that day. There was some other guy who history tells us spoke for like a couple of hours. Nobody remembers him. But we remember these words. 77 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here, having thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. The Gettysburg Address at the dedication of the Gettysburg National Cemetery by President Abraham Lincoln. I've walked that hallowed ground of Gettysburg twice, that battlefield, and seen the incredible garden of stone there. And so as we prepare for this Memorial Day, I want you to think about what Memorial Day is to you. It's not about sales, people. It's not about swimming pools opening. It's not about barbecues. It's about you taking the time to remember in memorial those who have gone before you and those who will go after you, who will lay down their lives, make that last full measure of devotion for this incredible nation so that you can be out there and go to the mall and take part in these sales, so that you can take your children to the pool under a blanket of freedom, so that you can grill and barbecue in your backyard or in a park, wherever. But it's all because of those who lie in parks called national cemeteries. My dad and my mom are one of those. In the Marietta National Cemetery in Atlanta, just north of Atlanta, Georgia. My father-in-law, Master Sergeant Ronald Keith Graham, and his wife are buried together in Arlington National Cemetery. See, Memorial Day really wasn't Memorial Day. Back in 1866, 3 years after the Gettysburg Address, 3 years after the dedication of the Gettysburg Cemetery, in Waterloo, New York, they came together and they had the first Decoration Day to remember those who had lost their lives in the Civil War, the Grand Army of the Republic. And it just continued on, this Decoration Day. And so in 1966, when I was just 5 years of age, President Lyndon Baines Johnson made it official and recognized the birthplace of what would become Memorial Day at Waterloo, New York. Then 5 years later, 1971, Memorial Day became a national holiday. I want you to think about that. From 1775, when we first established the Army and the Navy and the Marine Corps, we finally made a day to remember, a national holiday, the last Monday in the month of May. And it was because people believed that that would be a time when the flowers would be blooming and we could really honor the beginnings of Decoration Day. So what I would just like for you to think about is before you run out to the malls, before you run out to the pools, before you fire up the grill, maybe, just maybe, if you could find a memorial there in your local town. If you could find a national cemetery not too far away from you, maybe you should load up the kids and take them to a place of honor. Take them to a place where they can understand that we don't say Happy Memorial Day, we say Honor Memorial Day. Because as Abraham Lincoln said, we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. Men and women who stood in the gap for us over all these years. And it's a very humbling thing when you stand there in the gardens of stone and you think about how that ground has been consecrated because of their sacrifices. And see, maybe, just maybe, if we could just get these kids these little knuckleheads who are running around dressed up in black, calling them Antifa or James Revenge or even BLM. Maybe if we could just take them and get them to see what it means to give a sacrifice, not burn down a building, not attack other people, not destroy churches, but take them to a place and say, see, this is the reason why you have a freedom of speech, a freedom of expression, although you're perverting it. These are the people that stood up against fascism, Nazism, communism, statism, socialism. Are we to say to them that you have died in vain? All of those men and women throughout World War II, like my dad? Because now we're accepting some of those very same philosophies of governance here in the United States of America. See, this is what happens when we don't say honor Memorial Day. This is what happens when we don't take our children to these places. This is what happens when we don't tell them what June the 14th means every year. Flag Day, Army Birthday. This is what happens when we don't talk to them about the establishment of the United States Navy, United States Marine Corps. Yeah, the Air Force, you guys came along a little later, 1948. But all of those who were willing to make the last full measure of devotion. That's why we have this country in such a flux. That's why this country is in such turmoil. Because we're not honoring the dead. We're not honoring their sacrifice, their service, their commitment. Heck, I think there's some people out there would rather go and visit Karl Marx's grave or Vladimir Lenin's grave, those useful idiots, as Vladimir Lenin said, instead of going to our own gardens of stone. Maybe we should take some young people and put them on an old Higgins boat and let them land on the beaches of Normandy or Iwo Jima. Maybe we should have them jump in behind enemy lines the night before D-Day. Maybe we should have them walk through the jungles of Vietnam. Maybe they should experience the things that these honored dead experienced. Maybe they should walk the battlefield of the Marne, the Argonne Forest, all of these places where American men and women have shed their blood. Maybe we should drop them off in Afghanistan since they think America's so bad. See, too many people don't appreciate what it means to live in this country because they don't know the sacrifices that people have made so that they can live in this country. You talk about 1%ers, those people who have raised their right hand and taken an oath, those people who have laid down their lives for another, like it says in John 15:13, those people who did like Isaiah did and stood before the host of the Lord and said, "Here am I, send me." Those are the real 1%ers. And it's an elite club. And not everyone can be a part of that club. As a matter of fact, not everyone is supposed to be a part of that club. See, inclusion doesn't mean throwing out a net and saying everyone can play. Inclusion in the military means that you're willing to join the incredible ranks of those that we remember on Memorial Day. And for those of us veterans that are here, as Lincoln talked about, it is incumbent upon us to tell the story of our brothers and sisters who lost their lives, to tell the story of how they lived, and also share why they died. They died because of the love that they had for this country, the incredible heroic actions that each and every one of them did. So I am admonishing you on this Memorial Day and all to come. Don't go out there and say Happy Memorial Day. Especially don't say it to me. But don't say it to anyone that has worn the uniform of the United States of America, because what we're supposed to say is honor Memorial Day. Go to the gardens of stone and just whisper those 3 words. Honor Memorial Day. Pay homage. Show respect. Show regard for those that did what so many others do not have the courage to do. Honor Memorial Day this 2023. Remember the birthdays of our Army, the soldiers, the sailors, the Marines, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, all of those people who stand on freedom's frontier, who stand a watch to keep us and put their lives in danger. They leave their homes, they leave their families because of the commitment that they have to us. And because of that last full measure of devotion, as Lincoln said, we have to take increased devotion. Steadfast and loyal.
Before they burn it down.